How are you all doing? Welcome to the Ad Hoc Affordable Housing Committee meeting. Mendes, you shouldn't roll your eyes on me. So we have one legislation, and I need Mr. Jameson to give it to me. I don't have the, okay, so maybe we should invite Mr. Cole to, is he here? Or Adrian, you want to, yeah, why don't you tell us about the legislation that we're getting ready to review?
Hello. So the legislation is for the third round of the Barnes Housing Trust Fund. The application for the third round was made available in September of 2016. The application deadline was on the 14th of November of 2016. We received 26 applications, and of those applications, we are recommending the funding for 6 of those projects. Today, this resolution is for the rental portion of those applications, and there will be another resolution for the homeownership and the homeowner rehab at a later date.
Chairman, I want to introduce Morgan Mansa to you all. You're like, who is this very, this is Morgan. She's new on our staff. We're thrilled to have her. She's in charge of the Barnes Fund process. Also, the Barnes Fund is governed by the Metropolitan Housing Trust Fund Committee, and so we're thrilled that our new chair, who was elected at our last meeting, Chris Farrell, is with us tonight too. Chris is in our audience.
Please stand up, Chris. He's a past council member, so
yes,
we don't let him get away from
it. There is fabulous life after council. And then also Councilman Sledge is also a member of the commission as well, and they unanimously moved to approve this funding.
Okay. Councilman Sledge, do you want to talk to us about it? I'm trying to make time so I can get the printer.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, in our discussion, just to give council members an idea of how the discussion went, we went through the committee recommendations that were given to us as commissioners, and we went through them. We were able to ask questions of our committee, of our representative on that committee. That committee is diverse in both its background and its thought. And when it came down to it, we accepted the committee's recommendations, the rental portions of which you will hear in this bill. There are home ownership portions as well that we approved. Those would come forth in a separate piece of legislation, but the pieces that we discussed regarding rental property, we felt comfortable with, and as Mr. Cole said, we recommended them unanimously.
Okay. Any questions? Do you feel that what is brought up today matches what we, the legislation we created? Are they doing what we asked them to do?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Yes, I do believe it is. We, as part of what this body wanted to see from the committee, from the Housing Trust Fund Commission, they wanted to see more applicants. They wanted to see diverse ideas within those applications, and I think we're getting there. I did have some questions, and other commissioners, we had some discussion about the fact that with the sale of the old convention center, we will be taking up a separate round of $5 million, hopefully sometime in the late spring, and we are really hoping that there's the possibility for us to get some even more sort of innovative ideas that maybe haven't come before the commission before, and an even larger pool and a diverse pool of applicants. But I do think in this round, given that applicants started kind of in the midst of our discussion, as we were undergoing changes in the application process, trying to make it simpler, trying to encourage more organizations to apply, I do think we achieved that goal of having more applications or more applicants. Several applicants, I remember from the sheet that we were given, applied for the same parcels if a parcel was involved with Metro. So obviously there had to be some decisions made within the committee. But I do think we're moving down that path. We are widening and broadening our pool of applicants. You will remember, too, the commission put a very small portion of the money that we allocated aside for what we call capacity building, nonprofit capacity building. The office has been doing that. They've been holding those training sessions, and I think that's why we've seen a larger applicant base, and what I hope will continue to grow to be a nonprofit applicant base. And we have been taking steps within the commission to try to continue to encourage that diversity and broadening of applications.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Hastings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say, one of the things is with us, we'd like to, we need affordable housing and fair housing and all of those good things. So I do applaud us for at least making that attempt. I don't really feel that we're all there yet because this is long and a tedious process. Mr. Councilman before me, there's a few things that I don't 100% feel the same way on. But what I can say, we are making some attempts to try to make things better. We as a legislative body, we need to start to investigate other ways to where we can help out with this process of affordable housing. Because this one group here can't do it. There is no way. We are the individuals that are out there with the individuals that can't find housing. Matter of fact, like I said, there's some of you who do realize and know that I have an aunt that is staying with me. There are other things that we need to do. I know there were legislations that were put into place beforehand to looking at for the for-profit margin and for some other things that we can do with Metro-owned land. And of course, there's some other things that we are going to face that will be open for us, but we can't narrow down the scope to this one phase. Again, I do appreciate all the things that we're going in. I think all of us are pushing and working in that same direction to try to answer this life's questions. But I cannot 100% put in to say to where it's all done. Needless to say, I can express, because this is a place to do it. I'm not griping. Well, I could be griping. But I can say that there is a sect of builders or developers or what need be that here locally, taxpayers that live inside of our districts to where most of the building is going on, that have no access to actually get a lot of these bids or whatever to be able to get inside of the system. The Barnes Fund, of course, there are some segments that they are working out to try to make it better. But we need to look into other avenues that we can allow the other sectors to be able to build in, not only just with this one area, but also allowing to where there's other bills that are coming forth. Because, of course, with nonprofit, you only have a certain amount of dollars that you're only going to allow to be able to build a home or a project. So I would like to express and to open up to all of us that are here to open up our minds to look in the other avenues that where we can actually find other ways that we can find or build affordable housing or allow these taxpayers or the other individuals that are out there. It's a lot of minority contractors, a lot of minority guys that are putting roofs on houses or whatever else, but we are finding a way to where it's only contracts are only going out to a certain amount of people. We need to do a little better at that, and that has nothing to do with the affordable housing group that we're with right now. But what I can say is we need to open up other doors in order to make this more effective and to where everyone in this city can play a part into making the affordable housing a success for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. If I may, let's discuss this legislation, and then we can afterwards we can after we vote we can talk about other new items if that's okay. All right, thank you, Councilman. Next one is Council Lady Allen.
Thank you. Just want to ask real quickly. I know that there was mention that this will bring in 132 new units. I wonder if there could just be kind of some brief description of how that breaks out between the three projects and what those would look like.
Sure. So the first project is for 265 units. This will be rental, multifamily, a larger development. And so if you hold on really quick, I can pull up the breakdown for that. Okay, so all of those units will be for 30 to 60% of area median income. The second project is for Dismiss Incorporated. We're really excited about this. We're excited about all the projects, but for this one, it speaks to Councilman Sledge's point of bringing about more diversity with the applications. It's housing for folks who were formerly incarcerated, and so we're developing those. It'll be 30 of those SRO properties or SRO units that will be developed with that grant. And then the third one is for 37 units. And again, that's going to be for rental, and it is for 3 units that are 30%, below 30% AMI, and then 34 units that are 30 to 60% AMI.
Yes, okay. Councilmember Mendez.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to follow up on Councilman Hastings' questions. He raises good points, and I thought maybe, I don't know who the right person to answer the question is, but I know when we were talking about affordable housing last year, there was this constant thread of, holy cow, there's so many different pieces of the puzzle depending on income level and whether you're trying to create new housing or preserve housing or fund housing, build housing, and if you could, would you mind describing where this fits into the big picture? To his point about, you know, it's a big problem and nothing is the complete solution. Just giving us a little context to remind us of all the stuff we talked about last year and how where this fits in on that grid that we talked about would be helpful.
So the Barnes Fund fits in under the fund category. Now, some of the projects, of course, will actually preserve some units. The homeowner rehab would be under preserve. However, we've put the Barnes Fund for affordable housing under the category of fund, and all of the rental units have to be 60% or below. And the homeownership units have to be 80% or below. So when we do this comprehensive housing plan, that's one of the things we want to make sure we have in there is that chart that we talked about last time and putting in exactly where this fits into that whole income category and funding piece.
All right, thanks. And then I guess the other thing for folks who might watch this on TV, just a reminder, I think a lot of us know it, but you guys wear two hats. I mean, today you're talking about the Barnes Housing Fund and that, you know, box you just described of, say, 30 to 60% of AMI and funding it, but you guys wear another hat with the mayor's office, and maybe just provide a summary of you know, where things are at for the bigger picture of trying to do all the things that Councilman Hastings talked about.
That's right. So the fund, build, preserve, and retain are the 4 kind of pieces that came from Nashville Next as it relates to affordable housing. So the Barnes Fund is one of the tools that we associate with fund, but there's also the Housing Incentives Pilot Program that's associated, which is $2 million that council put into this budget, or for next year, 2017, 2018. We're also working on a long-term lease at 12th and Wedgwood for up to 170 units, which will go back to the Planning Commission because we're actually hoping to increase units there. But so that's the build component where we're trying to use Metro-owned properties in a different way for affordable and workforce housing development. And so that's one piece to it. When we look at all the different tools, I think we have several different tools, and I often talk about how Nashville is trying just about every single affordable housing tool that's out there. The fact that we're doing inclusionary zoning. So we're kind of looking at all the different tools, and we can't forget MDHA in this picture as well. They're also a huge component of affordable housing, and preserving that affordable housing is going to be key as well. And so we have some partnerships with them, and continual conversations about how do we strike the balance with affordable housing going forward.
Thanks for that. And I just want to say, I mean, I do appreciate your continued efforts to make sure that we hit all the different tools in all the different ways. And I know that this committee, and I think the whole council is interested in supporting your efforts to make it be equitable socially, and that all parts of Nashville chip in to get to where we need to go on this.
Chairman? Add one more thing. I'm really appreciative of the comments. I'm really appreciative of Councilman Hastings' comments around, wanting affordable housing in your districts. I mean, that ultimately having the place for the affordable housing to go is your decision, and is critical that we have that support. Because if we can't, this is one tool of many tools, but ultimately we've got to be able to disperse it around the county and have the support of the local elected official to get it there.
All right, thank you. And I remind you that we are going to continue the meeting after we vote on this. Hopefully not for too long, but I'm really very proud of this. I think as a committee, we worked really hard at trying to do this, and we had a good partner with the mayor's office. So we are getting ready to vote today. It's the first step in something that we worked really hard for many years. So can I make a motion if I'm the chair? I guess I can. You want to make? Okay, you guys beat me to it. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Against? Okay, so this passes, and thank you to the mayor's office for all the work. So next subject is we were going to have a meeting today to get the mayor's office to give us an update on the other things we asked them to do, and I decided to postpone that for the next couple of weeks. We're going to send an email to people that used to come to the committee meetings, and I remind you that if you have any questions or issues that you want to get the mayor's office to address, this will be a good chance to send me those questions. That way I can, or well, if it comes from you, can they send it to me, Jamison, or they have to send it directly to them? Okay, so please send me those questions so they have time to prepare an answer. They'll come back in a couple of weeks and they'll have to give us an update on the plan we asked them to do, an update on all these different things that you guys were talking about today. Any other concerns you guys may have, I'm sure they want to answer those questions, and so I'm asking you to be creative and ask them questions so they can be prepared to give us the information we need. Any other issues? Anybody have any other points? Do you guys want to say anything? Go ahead. Adrian Harris.
So there, you might have seen there's an announcement tomorrow at 1 p.m. in the mayor's media room to announce the Barnes Fund recommendations. So that's tomorrow. There's also an announcement on Wednesday that you might have received in your inbox from THDA, the Tennessee Housing Development Agency. They have a new statewide program related to down payment assistance that I think will be tremendous for this county. So if you can also attend that one, it's at 10 a.m. in the mayor's media room as well. So hope that you can attend.
Thank you, Adrian. I just want to say one more thing about this short-term rental, and I know I'm opening a Pandora's box, but I really am concerned about all the units that left the market because of the the making it into a commodity. So as we discuss this legislation in the coming weeks, let's keep in mind that the numbers are like 4,000 units fled the market. People that used to live there can't live there anymore, and that has impacted people on a cross-section of the people in Nashville. In the parts of the city where we want to see more housing and not less housing. So just want to make that point. And if we don't have any more issues, yes, Mr. Councilman, yes.
I just wanted to also suggest, I'm not sure how, Mr. Chair, you would like this to go on, but to open up and to come up with other ideas on how we can actually deal with this as a city, because if we don't deal with it, it's not going to happen. Of course, we know the Barnes Fund cannot do it by itself, or the mayor's office, affordable housing. We have to come up with the ideas. I have some ideas myself, but we need all of us to come up with that solution. And instead of just going and hearing, the product of what they're doing, we need to do some investigation and see what we can get done as well. Yeah. So I just wanted to mention that to see when or how we can get that going.
I can answer that, and that's a good point. And we are going to have a meeting a month from now till the end of the year of this committee, right? On each committee, each date will be dedicated to another issue. If you want to take on one of those dates and come up with a program for that day, please do. I mean, this is our committee, it's not my committee. And so it is open for any of you to bring up if you feel that we need to go back to the basement and have the meeting as a workshop, we can do that too. I do want to say that what they are doing is the legislation we pass, is what we ask them to do. We are going to hold them accountable to the mayor's office, but it's our legislation. So if we come up with a different legislation, I will be very proud to see that happen. I'm sure they want us to be creative and come up with other solutions. Just think about a date, a subject, reach out to Rosie, tell them what month do you want, and yeah, please do. I highly encourage you to take the initiative, Councilmember Hastings. I know that you have unique issues in your district and you have a unique vision, and we want to nurture that. Thank you for offering. Yep, okay. Well, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.